In a previous video, I showed you my own design for an Amiga 500 internal Gotek mount. The kit was an attempt to make it as turnkey as possible, which meant you could take a current, factory OLED equipped Gotek, remove it from its case, and install it into an A500 simply with what was included in my kit. No extra wiring or modifying your precious Amiga required. It was a success, and I thank all the people who purchased it and continue to do so. The question is, can I create the same turnkey solution for the Amiga 1200? The answer is that I got very close, and I am satisfied with the result, and I believe you would be too. So be sure to check the description of this video for a link to my eBay store where you can pick one up for yourself. I decided to start with my A500 mount and modify it for the A1200, as it is already set up to accept the Gotek PCB. The floppy drive in an A1200 pretty much sits right down on the case, so I don't need to fiddle with the standoffs like on the A500. There is just this small tang sticking out here with a mount hole that I needed to make. The two top holes lined up the same as the A500, however, without the standoffs, I needed to thicken the bracket in those areas to give something more substantial for the screws to bite into. The first iteration was very close, but I could not close the top cover of the A1200 all the way. The problem was the rotary encoder, the bottom of which was against the bottom case. But the threaded area of the shaft was too tall for the case to shut properly. The simple solution was that the encoder shaft was skinnier if you go past the threads, so I just moved the encoder assembly back 4 mm in the mount so that the skinnier part of the shaft was at the case seam. The knob will not be able to be seated all the way in, but that's no problem, as it's still got most of its firm friction fit available. The next problem was not so easily solvable. Unlike the A500 mount, these OLED jumpers were never going to reach. So I will just have to supply longer jumpers in my kits to account for this. So here is the final product. Now that you have seen it, it's time for the instructional portion of this video, where I show the user how to install it. I will be selling a version with and a version without the Gotek. If you ordered one with a Gotek included, skip ahead to where I install it into the Amiga. If you order the kit without the Gotek, start by removing your Gotek from its case. Take my mount and carefully line up the two rear posts with the Gotek PCB and press them in. Then insert 3 of the included screws to hold the Gotek PCB down. Do not over tighten, snug is fine. Also bend the LED back as it will interfere with the top case, being careful not to leave the legs of the LED shorted with each other or any part of the PCB. Now install the rotary encoder assembly, which flips 180 degrees before installation, and use the included screw and stepped washer like so for the larger screw hole in this PCB. Next, replace the short jumper wires on the OLED screen with the included longer ones. I will mark the tops of the connections for you with some paint, but here's the pinout just in case. Leave this pin on the bottom empty. Now it is time to install the Gotek into the Amiga. Flip your A1200 over and remove all the screws you see. This includes 5 screws to hold the top of the case on, and these 2 additional rear screws for the drive. Now carefully, while holding the case together, flip the Amiga back over and place the rear so it hangs over the edge of your work surface, so that you can still access the screw holes for the drive. And move the top cover and keyboard out of the way. Although it is not necessary, you can elect to remove the connections for the top case. And you may also elect to remove the keyboard's ribbon cable by using some needle nose pliers to pull up on the socket to release the cable. Take care with the keyboard ribbon cable. Pull the power and ribbon cables from the original drive and remove the last remaining screw and set it aside. You will be reusing it. Now you can put the Gotek in place and reinstall that last screw that you just set aside. This will line up the Gotek bracket correctly. And again, do not over tighten even the original Amiga screws, they strip out easily. Now utilize the fact that you left the case off the edge of the table to install the 2 remaining drive screws. Again, being careful not to over tighten. Snug is fine. Reattach the drive cables, and this might be a good time to test the Gotek to make sure it survives shipping and your installation. Every one of these is tested before they leave my cave, but you never know. Reinstall the keyboard ribbon cable if you removed it, by first making sure the connector is still all the way up. Then inserting the ribbon cable all the way down. And using a tool small enough to fit, push down the connector to lock the ribbon cable in place by going back and forth multiple times until it is fully seated. With the keyboard still a little out of place to reach the connections, reconnect the top cover if you disconnected it. Then place the keyboard back in place. To install the top cover, pass the OLED screen through the drive slot, keeping the wires to the right of the USB port, as you lower the right side of the case down first. Getting the Gotek push buttons through the slot is kind of a pain, but since they are redundant, you may consider clipping them off. Keep your attention on the drive opening to make sure it all lines up like this. Carefully flip the Amiga upside down again and install the 5 case screws. Now flip the Amiga upright again. Snap the OLED into its holder and press it down into the cooling fins. Okay, final test. And there you go. Please consider buying this kit from me. I also sell many other Amiga peripherals in my eBay store. The link to my store is in the description. Thanks for watching, friends.